Erin Bohm, and I'm here to represent the Montezuma School to Farm project. I was going to show you a little video made by one of our mentors, which is a program called the Edible Schoolyard, and they did a nice little video that described this term that I'd like to use, which is an edible educator, or edible education. And so in that video, which we will not be viewing because we do not have the internet, the idea that I wanted to make sure that we started out with is just, what does that mean when you say, what is it, you're an edible educator, or edible education as a whole? And really what it means is taking students into an outdoor classroom, which is essentially a food production area that is hopefully on their campus. So this is sort of in opposition to the idea of going on a field trip to go visit a farm, that you try to build that experience nearby or on their campus. And while they're there, you use that garden environment as a conduit to health education, mathematics education, science education, earth science education. So in lieu of watching that video, we'll now know and agree that this term, edible education or an edible educator, is someone who uses food, the production of, and the cooking of, and everything in between as the bowl into which we pour all the experiences in and pull out concepts that are theoretical and all over the place in their Colorado State standards. So they overlap very nicely when you're in that outdoor education scenario. So the end goal is to get kids excited about eating real food. That is really what an edible educator does. And in order to do that, I wanted to talk about a discovery that we've made at the Montezuma School to Farm project. And the first part of the discovery is not revelatory. Kids like to eat. And they get really excited about eating, no matter what it is almost. Kids will eat what they grow. And while they are growing and harvesting and eating, they become magically really fierce defenders of soil and water health. And it's a surprisingly direct route that you can take these children on a trip that seems to be about cooking soup and come out on the other side with a small army of stewards of our land almost by magic. So speaking of a direct route, I myself have actually a very terrible sense of direction. And so I'd like to tell you a little bit about how a person such as myself managed to become a garden coordinator, an edible educator with a team of people at the Montezuma School to Farm project who are on a mission to connect eating healthy, good food with the health of our soil and water. So I've rarely taken a direct route anywhere since I have a terrible sense of direction. But as I said, we've made this discovery that there is a very direct route between eating good food and understanding the importance of healthy soil and water. So despite having a terrible sense of direction, in 1996 I actually became a wilderness guide and was in charge of getting people from A to B all the time and traveling by boat and by backpack. I got my first real taste of freedom, but also more importantly, a sense of real self-sufficiency. And I quickly realized that even though I had a terrible sense of direction, the only person who could really be responsible for knowing where I was in the wilderness was me. So I learned to read a map. And it took a lot of effort, but I realized through that process that the discipline that was required to stay oriented on the land gave me the freedom to move around and explore and be confident. So it's this desire for the freedom that being self-sufficient offers that's driven my work ever since, and now here at Montezuma School to Farm, it continues to do so. So 10 years later, I've been a wilderness guide for quite a while. Now it's 2006 and it's summer and it's a beautiful day in North Idaho. And I have begun working at what's called a therapeutic boarding school. And it's specifically for 17-year-olds whose families feared for their choices and in some cases for their lives and intervened by sending them to wilderness, therapeutic boarding schools, these programs as a means of intervention. And their goal for their children is rediscover who they want to be, keep them safe enough for long enough that they can get a high school diploma. So here we are. I'm standing in an abandoned, overgrown garden on a school campus way up in North Idaho with two extremely irritated 17-year-old boys who have broke a bunch of rules and now are on what's called workies. So they are with me and I need to find them 4 hours of manual work to do. And being curious about this hidden garden, I decided to take them over there and spend our time discovering what might be in this garden. So I got them in there and I showed them how to weed. I told them they could rip and tear and throw and dig. And these are things, of course, I've done many times as a wilderness guide, more for like building a latrine or getting a tent in the ground. But instead, I was using these skills to show them how they might take away some weeds without taking away food plants. So as the time went on, this garden emerged, the food plants emerged, and this really caught their attention. They were being allowed, actually they were being encouraged to be destructive, which to them was actually pretty great. So we'd come to a better place, they're having a good time, and slowly as those weeds came out, we saw, oh, there's a decent vegetable garden here. And I grew up growing vegetables with my parents, so I could recognize a vegetable garden when I saw one. So once we saw these overgrown weeds come out, I launched straight into a lesson about how to prune tomato plants. And the principles of pruning are very simple. Direct the energy of the plant by removing any part of that plant that distracts from your goal for that plant. So in this case, that is the elusive, successful growing of a ripe tomato fruit in the few number of growing days available in North Idaho. So here we go. We may take away leaves, stems, even whole branches, maybe even flowers that you are hoping are going to turn into tomatoes. You take those away, actually, when you're pruning, because just like the principles of using a map, the principles of pruning are the same no matter what plant you're working on. So I discovered here the principles of pruning a tomato plant could be applied in many places, namely, in this case, helping youth understand that only they could be in charge of where they direct their energy. So I discovered I could use a lesson on pruning a tomato plant as a metaphor, and actually, and also as a practice, because of course it's a hands-on lesson, that they could remove anything that might divert or distract their energy away from attaining their goals in their lives. Prune away those behaviors, those choices that obstruct getting your diploma, getting on with your life. This is how I came across garden education. This is how I became the Mancos School Garden Coordinator and Education Manager for Montezuma School Farm. And so 5 years later, I've taken my hard-won math reading skills and wilderness guide skills and I've oriented them around so that I continue to teach self-sufficiency and I continue to do that outside, except now I do that in an outdoor classroom that is in a garden on a school campus, just like that one, in the form of conservation-based food growing lessons that are integrated into the school day. And that's what Montezuma School Farm does, and for more information about the nuts and bolts of our whole program, I'll be a part of the breakout session tomorrow, where I'll line out that detailed information on Montezuma School Farm. We also have a table set up with our annual report that gives you a lot more information about Montezuma School Farm. My hope today, actually, though, is to focus on something that Montezuma School Farm achieved this year as an educational highlight. Lucky for us, we are a program of the Mancos Conservation District, and so I am able to work not only with elementary school students and their teaching faculty, but I also get to work with people such as you, part of the people who are part of our community, who are on board with our local conservation district, who often we call on, like this man over here, Jack Burke, to be an expert guest speaker who comes into this middle of a school day, bringing that outside world into the school campus, into the classroom during the school day, not as an extracurricular, but as an integral part of how they learn science, math, and health. So, today, with the help of amazing support from the CACD, I was able to help Montezuma School to Farm take our edible education to the next level, and we created a body of curriculum that directly links food production to a very pressing conservation issue, which is, of course, drought. So I have brought with me to share with you the sort of information about what we've done, and also explain how it works in the context of a school day. So inside here, this is our introduction page inside the manual, and in a little while, we printed out a select few hot off the presses for you guys. So we'll hand these out so you can get these into your hands and look at them a little more closely. This might be tricky to read from far away, so I thought I would just read it aloud. Everyone has an equal need for water. It is connected to basic survival, safety, and a sustainable quality of life. Teaching children how to prepare for drought through school garden education teaches them strategies for sustaining human coexistence. In Colorado, 89% of the water consumed within the state is used for agriculture, and this precious resource is inextricably linked to our food supply. As children become the adults who will lead our communities, let them enter into adulthood empowered with water systems knowledge and water and soil conservation habits. To begin instilling yourself and your students the following definition: drought, a long period of abnormally long rainfall that adversely affects living and growing conditions. And the term resilient, able to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions. So what we created is a 12-lesson unit for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, explaining the science of drought, resilience, and emphasizing its connection to food production. So what it means is that the curriculum is based around the idea that you want to lay down a foundation that is shared among 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, just like that. And these are defined as core lessons, which means they're meant to make sure that everyone has a firm understanding of all the key terms and the key processes that go into drought conditions with regard to food production. Then we connect those concepts to the work that they do in their own school gardens growing food. So we make sure that they are understanding that these are not ideas out there, they are practices here on their school campus. Here are the basics. So this is, I don't know, page 4 or something in the curriculum manual, and this kind of explains how we conduct garden classes. And again, it's not an extracurricular, this is during the school day. So these lessons are always anchored by routines and rituals that you can see laid out in these 3 little paragraphs. It lets students know what's expected of them and what they can expect to happen in their garden class each and every time. And a typical garden class is between 45 and 60 minutes. So this is, again, building those relationships with the teachers and being in concert with the very tightly scheduled reality of public school. It's sort of like an airport. Things are very tightly scheduled, and so this is meant to match and work with that system. So a typical garden class begins with an opening circle. We go into a working group or a group activity. The kids either are working together or they're split off into working groups. And then we close with a closing circle, which is meant to reflect back on what's happened and help those lessons settle in and really locate a spot in the brain that will come back when they're inside their classrooms and their teacher says, remember when we were in the garden and we talked about this? Okay, well now we're going to use that and do this. And so this reflection at the end is the critical piece that really makes this into an experiential education experience for them. This is how it plays out into our lesson plans. So here is one of the lessons from inside the manual. And this is a good example of how we're doing something that needs doing in the garden. Planting must happen if you are actually going to produce food. And this is not sort of a theoretical exercise, make a school garden, the program that I run. We can get a good 500 pounds of food out of our gardens if we're on point and using all the principles of growing appropriately in high desert environments. So, what is the effect of drought on the life cycle of a plant? What's going to happen? when we try to grow food during a drought. So I want to point out a few, this is sort of the main body of the lesson here, the opening circle, and it lays out the core idea and the main activity that's coming their way. Over here on the side, you can see, I wonder if we can make it any bigger. It's probably blurry back there. Is that true? Mm-hmm.
There you go.
And I wonder, should we try to scoot it back? Yeah, I wondered if we scooted it back a little. And like I said, we'll have a little bit of time, I hope, to get these in our hands and you can see a little better. But so that's it. Yeah, that's probably it. But just to point out that the way that we have structured this is very intentional. So the objective over here on the side, you have objective, you have materials and tools, and you have before you begin. And that's in every lesson plan. So the objective is to make sure you're honing in and making sure that the educator and the student have a clear understanding of what the outcome should be. And then the before you begin section down here is making sure that the educator is set up for success with clear instructions on how to prepare before the lesson. These lessons are pretty prop intensive. There's experiments, there's demonstrations, there's all kinds of hands-on processes happening, and so it requires a lot of preparation and organization, which, by the way, is why the public school education system teachers are so excited that we come, because we come with this big barrel of hands-on props that for them would be extremely time-consuming to access and get together all the time. So being able to make sure that whoever is teaching has a really good idea of how to do that is why a lot of these lessons are successful. And then over here, opening circle, this is us asking some formative questions to make sure that the students' brains are moving in the right direction so that they're going to really be able to understand whatever piece of drought science that we're trying to have them retain. And the opening circle tends to be a cross between a lecture, a discussion, and a group activity. It's getting them oriented to what you're about to do. It also frames the garden task in the context of drought education. So out in the garden, there are things that have to be done if you're going to grow food. And the idea is to take those tasks, they're on their to-do list, take those tasks that must be happening in the garden and teach them in that context of drought education, and thereby growing food at the same time as getting that drought science out there. So this is just up here to show you that as the kids get older, that opening circle is given to all the children, and then if they happen to, so meaning 6th graders for sure, and if they happen to be 7th graders, we have an expansion for a 7th grade class and an expansion for an 8th grade class, so that you lay out that opening circle and kind of get them on the same page with the core idea, and then you expand and complexify that if you happen to have a 7th grade class or an 8th grade class. So that's how we take one lesson plan and open it up to a larger audience of students. So we have a lot of different lessons in here. They really span a lot of different topics. So this lesson is about sort of the big picture societal effects. The first question up here probably is hard to see, but the first question is, how might drought change your family's life? Like, what exactly might change about how you go about your business? And so this is an example of a lesson that's more about a big picture societal questions. We also have lessons that are about planting and growing techniques, water-saving agricultural techniques that have to do with drought education. This is something, of course, we're doing anyway because we don't have a lot of time with the students during the summer, of course. So we expand our spring and our fall growing season dramatically and also grow through the winter. We overwinter a lot of things, so this is some specific techniques. We also have lesson plans that are really there to encourage the act of collaboration. So we have a lesson in the lesson plan there specifically to remind the educator to bring in guest speakers. Go find your local drought experts and bring them in. Don't forget to do that. So we also have lessons that are based in using online science tools. So this is a tool from NASA. So this is also something I can't show you because we don't have internet, but this is beautiful animated, I think it's about a 5-minute loop, and it shows the jet stream moving around the planet, and it rotates the planet so that you can see how the jet stream works. So this really is an example of using up-to-date online scientific tools for them to really understand how is weather generated. What is drought in the context of weather on Earth? So in this lesson, for example, students go on to divide into groups and they conduct experiments right there, either in their classroom or in the garden classroom, that shows them why rain falls from clouds, how thunderstorms are built is the other one, and then how water travels from land to atmosphere and back again. So this is the overriding goal here, is to take our exclusive access to our future leaders. We are a nonprofit operating inside of a public school in most cases. In one case, our garden coordinator was actually hired by the Cortez Middle School and actually is an elective teacher working for the public school. But in most cases, we're a nonprofit operating inside of a school, and we're there to build relationships with these students over the years so that we can make sure that they are not stalling out in their understanding of drought as a science and drought as a need for new conservation habits. We're building those habits over time. So that's why I feel really so privileged to be able to have this access to them year after year as they grow, so that they can learn and see that movement in complexity from a very basic, the water cycle, all the way through to an 8th grade level lesson on the jet stream. So what happens is we end up being able to teach the underlying principles of drought. Like I began speaking about the principles of staying oriented and using a map, or the principles of pruning a plant. Those principles of drought science can be applied in many different places, and so we can help students become aware of their role as citizens and as consumers and up-and-coming leaders. We want them to become critical thinkers, and we want them to be interested in the processes that create drought, and then the processes that create our other natural resources, and then what either preserves them or damages them. We are privileged to work with them year after year to build this trust, and also to make sure that they become landowners who are resilient. So at this point, I would like to have a minute or two where probably we share, and you can just take a second and flip through. And if you have questions, great, and if you don't, that's fine too. Just give you a chance to take a look at this. These are in the exhibit hall on the table, a handful of them scattered throughout the day. And if you end up being interested in purchasing this resource to use with your constituents and your communities, there's a sign-up sheet on the table. We did not bring, we're not credit card capable, but you can write a check and buy one on the spot, or you can give us your contact information and we'll connect with you about, could you guys share in case, and I'll see how far around the room I get.
Yeah, if somebody wants this one, I looked at it.
She got a chance already. Do you want to pass it down? Yeah, maybe down to that little table. Yes.
I have a question, Erin. What portions of the school day do teachers traditionally put this lesson class time in?
So with the elementary level teachers, it has mostly to do with the logistics of the day. And so this year, the principal, for the first time, said, though I don't usually tell my teachers what they have to do, they have to go to garden. Everyone has to go to garden. And so they sat together and laid out, here are 6 time blocks that work in the course of an elementary day, and the teachers actually signed up for the time blocks that, for them, slotted into the flow of their day. For example, there's 4th and 5th grade seem to always be sort of in their quiet time between 2 and 3, and so they signed up from 2 to 3. Other classes choose to come during their science period. So, for example, 6th grade comes, they actually come weekly, and they come during their science period once a week. Yeah.
That was my next question. How often are you seeing the kids and going over this curriculum over the course of a school year? How often?
So it depends according to the school. So at Make a School where I work, elementary grades, all the grades come. They each come once a month. Middle school science comes once a week. 7th grade health. So I also teach health classes, which is actually cooking based. I have a whole outdoor cooking set up so that they can come harvest whole foods, understand what whole foods are, cook them there. That happens once a week for 2 quarters a year. In Dolores, for example, though, they have innovated a new kind of way of dealing with the difficulty of scheduling, which is that, for example, 5th grade comes for a half day twice a year. So they'll do a fall sort of on-campus field trip. They'll come for a half day in the fall and a half day in the spring. Other teachers elect to come once a week. There's a lot of different strategies going on out there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Erin, first of all, I've seen most of the stuff you guys have done. It's awesome.
Thank you.
One of the big issues, actually I talked to Sarah, she gave us some materials that we brought to another district, but what do you do in the summertime?
Yeah.
That's one of the issues that keeps coming back, and we keep throwing different ideas out, but I just kind of wanted to get some feedback from you. Any other thoughts?
So yeah, at the Make School Garden, I've piloted a few approaches. The Dolores School Gardens piloted a few approaches. The two that seem to work the best, one of them I've modeled off of Steele Elementary's program. The Steele Elementary they're a suburb of Denver. I don't remember which suburb they're in, but they're outside of Denver. They have the longest continuous running school garden program in Colorado, so I've called up them and asked them the same question. They have a summertime apprenticeship program, they call it, or family garden care program. So what it is that you set it up, or you frame it as like, this could be your child's kind of first job. And the student and their family sign up for 1 2-week period of care in the summertime. And so I broke the summer up into 2-week periods and solicited students who might be interested and got their parents on board. And so at any given 2-week period in the school, or in the summertime, there was 2 families signed up. And if they completed their 2-week period and it seemed like they were checking items off the running list that I would leave for them, they got a little $20 stipend, like their first contracted job. And it made a big difference in sort of sealing the deal, people showing up, people feeling like they're really expected to be there, the student feeling like they're expected to be there. So that was one model that worked really well, and actually didn't require a ton of participation. If you look at it's not that many 2-week periods, and you don't need that many families to be on board. The other option that's worked well is, Wednesday leaders or Tuesday leaders, and it's advertised as a community-wide work period from 9 to 11, and come and have some lemonade, pick some weeds out of the way, and then take home whatever's ready to go. And that's also worked really well. That's that's like in the newspaper and everywhere. Whereas the family apprentice program is sort of more advertised inside the school, so it's a smaller pool. Both of those things seem to work really well. And honestly, there's also a lull in the summer where we try not to plant too much. We're really looking to nail that timing so that things are coming on as school starts. So there's the things that take the entire growing season, of course, the pumpkins and what have you. But a lot of the smaller, shorter duration growing plants, we're waiting. We don't, we're waiting until just the right moment so that they're coming on throughout September.
Yeah, one of the places we were working at, they hired can't remember the name of the position, but basically a mentor, if you will.
Right.
And we tried to integrate some of the master gardeners into that a little bit and stuff. That gets difficult because they're like, well, we have to educate them at work. And it's like, well, you're doing both. But anyway, long story short, I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think that family block one's one Sarah mentioned to me as well. They're tough, but I think they can be successful if you guys figure out how to do your guidance.
The kids, $20 to a little kid is kind of a big deal. So, and though that's not the reason they're there, they tend to be the kids who are really passionate about garden during the year. They love it, they just want to be there all the time, and that that little $20 stipend just sort of makes it into a contract. It makes the family feel too that they're really in sort of.
Little buy-in.
They're a little bought in, that's right. The other thing I would say is that just that the summertime needs to be coordinated by one person. So the great majority of the successes that we've had, I feel like, are due to the fact that we have a paid school garden coordinator in each garden. So there's someone, in this case me, in another case Megan Talmadge, whoever it is, who knows what's going on, who makes sure things are moving forward throughout the summer, even if they're alone doing it. You know, there's sort of one person running the show, and that seems to be really critical.
Cool, thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Where does the funding come from for the program?
Yeah, so if you look on do you have so there's a little page that lets you know where our funding comes from on the back there. But, and so when you say we have diverse funding sources for our program as a whole, the Montezuma School of Farm Project. The funding for this beautiful drought resilient curriculum manual really came from CACD.
You guys had a Vista volunteer group at one point, and some other things as well, right?
That's right. So we rely pretty heavily on the AmeriCorps system. We have one Vista. This is our last year getting to have a Vista, though. You only have so many. But then we have in each garden there's at least one, and in some cases more, direct service AmeriCorps staff. And so, for example, at Make a School Garden, I'm the garden coordinator. I have a part-time paid position, and then I have my sidekick, AmeriCorps direct service person, who rotates. They're there for a year. We've had two direct service AmeriCorps choose to stay on though, so they've been there 2 years in a row. It's really great, that continuity. And then in some cases we've been able to provide a paid position. One of our AmeriCorps became one of our garden coordinators.
Yeah. Is there a website that people can go to or direct people in their districts to?
Yeah, so we just got a website like 3 days ago or something, and it's through, let's see, I wonder if it ended up, because it was...
Is it the water conservation one?
I think so.
SanJuanWatershed.org?
Yes. It did make it in there.
It's in there,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Yay!
Yeah.
That was some tight timing. We had just gotten on there when this went to, so that is, we're just starting to build it, but yeah, that and our Facebook page are sort of our main spots. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? So I'll have, these again will be, a handful of these will be on the table in the exhibit hall, and you can write a check and leave the check there, or you can sign the little clipboard where we will connect with you via email and we'll do an exchange for you if you want to purchase one of these. And then these will be online as well for just downloading portions of, if you don't necessarily need a hard copy. Thanks so much.